This evening, the national chairman of the governing National Democratic Congress, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, is calling for the removal of the Electoral Commission's top leadership, accusing them of gross incompetence and electoral mismanagement. While speaking on PM Express, he described the current EC leadership as unfit for purpose, citing what he described as repeated failures to conduct credible elections. He warned that persistent electoral stalemates point to either negligence or outright inability to perform their institutional duties.
Everything has been removed. So there is overwhelming evidence that this commission is not fit for purpose. And if any serious country will want to maintain this type of electoral commission, then I don't know what the country is about.
So there will be a change at the EC leadership?
There has to be a change.
Jimensa must go?
Yes, I think the three top leadership must all go.
So that will be the chairperson herself and her two deputies.
They must all go. They have mismanaged the commission so badly.
Their positions, though, are positions protected under the Constitution. They're guaranteed tenure.
But the Constitution has given us the path to remove them, and that is what is happening to the Supreme Court. You may be guaranteed, but there is no position under our Constitution. There is no appointee or state functionary who cannot be removed under this Constitution. There's a procedure of removing the president. There's a procedure of removing Speaker of Parliament. That's why there's a procedure for removing Chief Justice. Everybody has, a way of holding them accountable, because if you make an appointee or a state functionary who is not accountable to anybody, there's no way to hold them to check, then you breed a monster. And so when you look through the Constitution, everybody in the Constitution can be changed.
But a senior research officer at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Dr. Kojo Asante, has stated that such remarks from top party officials are likely to influence public perceptions, fueling concerns about political bias or attempts to forcefully remove leadership for partisan interest.
It's clear that, where you have a case where he happens to be the chairman of the governing party, and that if there was to be any process triggered, for the removal of the leadership of the EC, it will fall in the lap of the president, who by constitutional dictate has to forward it to the Chief Justice, and the process will be picked up from there. Once that you get these kinds of statements from somebody high up in the party like him, it would definitely impact on public perceptions about political bias or political interest in sort of pushing out the leadership. So I think that's the challenge that I would think that, given the challenges that he knows with the way people might perceive the issue of political interference, that these desires will be kept quiet. I mean, at the end, there is a process. If anybody, and remember, he's also a citizen of Ghana, if anybody felt that the leadership of the Electoral Commission has not performed their responsibilities, that they need to leave, there is a process for doing that. So his only problem is that he just happens to be in a position where adding his voice and calling for this, create a perception that this anything that happens will be induced, and this is something that is always very difficult to explain away or to separate the issues about genuine misperformance or deficit in the way in which the leadership has conducted themselves. So I think that's the problem, that when he adds his voice, this is the problem that it creates.
Meanwhile, Programs Director for Election Security at the Center for Democratic Development, Paul Mensah Brampa, has added his voice to the ongoing debate over the proposal. Let's listen to him.
Every opposition political party accuses state institutions who have roles to play in our elections. And this is not unique to what we witnessed ahead of the 2024 elections, with more threats and also campaign statements purporting to take actions against several state leadership of state institutions when the opposition won power. And I was just developing a blog post, and I titled it "Campaign Promises and Threats Comes to Fruition." So it's becoming a pattern that if we are not careful and we encourage that, we may not have any tenure or safety for any of our major institutions who play one or other role in our electoral process. So I see this as a fulfillment of campaign promises and threats.
The chairman makes the argument that there are processes in place to remove them, and he cited the ongoing process or inquiry into the suspension of the Chief Justice as an example. You say that it appears we don't have, or we don't want to have, a more permanent approach to leadership of these institutions, but that's
I made an example of what happened in Mampong. If the people who were protesting to canvass for their own to be nominated and appointed as municipal chief executive had done that lobby without the public getting to know their intention of ethnicity dimension of it.
Well, let's broaden the conversation here on the pulse and bring in Kwame Bochio. He's joining us via Zoom. He is the spokesperson, actually, for the CPP as we explore the conversation further. I appreciate your time here on the pulse. I just want to get your initial reaction. As key stakeholders in the previous election, what's your analysis of the EC's performance? You have to unmute for me to hear you clearly.
I'm sorry. Good afternoon. I would say that aside from being the General Secretary of the CP, I also did my national service with the Electoral Commission, the General Parliament District in 2004. So I do have some knowledge of the inner workings of the Electoral Commission. And it is not an easy job. And of course, I recognize that there have been various petitions stemming all the way from 2020 regarding the IRS West election, the SAL issue, and many other events. And as to whether these fall under the grounds for removal under Article 146, which is stated misbehavior and incompetency, I believe it's something that will be in the domain of the authorities who will be handling the petition. However, from my point of view, I would say that let's wait for that outcome, because from our dealing with the Electoral Commission in the last election, there were various calls for the auditing of the electoral register. We expressed our opinion on it that we do not believe there is a problem with the register. And indeed, it is the same register that has put the current government in power. If indeed, if there had been a flawed register, that would be a substantial issue that we would have to deal with now. But from everything that has happened, we feel that bar Ablikuma North, the election has been run successfully. This is not the first time that we've had electoral issues. I think we had some minor issues with the Payne constituency some years ago in the Donga-Hafo region. So from our point of view, we are aware of the various problems that have happened with the Electoral Commission, right from Iowa, West and others. But as to whether they fall under grounds for removal, we would say that we would let the committee do its work. But for now, we do not think that until we see further evidence, because I also speak with the additional hat as a legal practitioner. And I think that all these things will be based on the evidence that will be brought to fore. Whether the various infractions being complained of can be laid at the doorstep of the Electoral Commission is what will determine whether the Electoral Commissioner and the two deputies should be removed or not. We are aware of the infractions. They are there for everyone to see, everyone can take judicial notice. They are not things to be denied. However, the fact that there have been infractions does not mean that the Electoral Commissioner was negligent in performing their duties or willfully caused those infractions. But from where we stand, we have seen those infractions. We do not see any reason to lay it at the feet of the Electoral Commission. However, that will depend on the evidence that will come out. If the evidence comes out and we realize that indeed it can be substantially laid at their feet, then we just have to separate the talk with their removal. But for now, we, out of an abundance of caution, we just want to allow the committee to do their work. And others have stated that given the heavy weight of Honorable Asiedu Petia, he shouldn't have voted into this. But I believe that under Article 21, he's entitled to his freedom of speech. The same way I, as a General Secretary, am entitled to give my opinion on the matter. The fact that we are not in power does not mean that my opinion will carry less weight than Mr. Asiedu Petia's vote. So he has expressed his opinion, and rightfully so. But I would say that for now, with the facts we have, unless we get further evidence, we do not think that the Electoral Commission should do that.
Now, we cannot deny the fact that there are political undertones to this whole issue. We saw a similar change of regime when the MPP took over power and then Charlotte Osei had to go. Now we're expecting same with Jean Mensah. From your angle, what do you feel about the political implications of this?
The political implications they are not good, because if you look at all our institutions, whenever a new party takes power, almost all the officials of almost every institution, sometimes even goes ahead to quasi-public-private institutions that are not totally public. It is not a good thing, but the situation is we can only use the Constitution as it stands now. And there's a perception that some of these decisions may be colored by political lenses. And it works both ways, because there's a complaint that whenever a new party comes, they remove the current heads and put in their own heads. However, what we forget is that those that they are removing were put there by their predecessors, who removed those who were before them. So it becomes an endless cycle. And I believe that until this constitutional issue is dealt with, we'll keep on having this. It is undeniable that it is a political issue. Almost everything in this country now has become political. I suppose because of the nature of our constitution, you cannot blame the citizens, you cannot blame the politicians. It's just the nature of our constitution. The executive has large appointing powers, and they can appoint and remove or even advise on the removal. And of course, whoever is put in a position by the executive, as much as the executive may put them there in the interest of transparency and for a good job to be done, the perception that whoever is put there, we want to do the bidding of whoever appointed them, is also there. But that is not always the case. You can have some being appointed. For example, you have the OSP, for example, who was appointed by the previous king. but has been maintained by the current regime. So in that sense, I suppose there's no perception of bias there. However, that does not mean that any perception of bias can be substantiated against the electoral commissioner or any other official who is being removed. And this cycle will continue. It is political, it is a fact, it is not such a good thing, but then the removing authorities will have their reasons because they may not trust maybe their future actions. They may not be based on current actions, but they may not trust the future actions of these appointees. And so until the constitution is changed, and I hope the Constitutional Review Committee takes a good look at this, until it is changed, we are going to have these political decisions in our institutions for a long time to come.
Kwame, stay with me. I'll come back to you. Just speak your thoughts on what key changes you propose to the Constitution to protect key roles like the Electoral Commission. But let me bring in the Deputy General Secretary of the NPP, Haruna Mohammed. We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. I just want to get your brief reaction as a political party. Are you satisfied with the performance of the Electoral Commission?
Yes, I'm very much satisfied with the performance of the Electoral Commission from the onset to date.
Hearing from the chairman of the NDC, I've noticed that indeed there may be troubled times ahead for leadership for the Electoral Commission. I want to pick your thoughts on this as a political party.
That is his opinion on those persons. It's not based on his assessment of their work, because they have already have a predetermined mindset for these officers before they came to power. But if you want to ask yourself, in the last election, all the performance of the Electoral Commission's work, even in 2020, there was no any budgetary allocation from elsewhere. We did not ask for any assistance from any other foreign agency in terms of performance of the Electoral Commission's function in terms of budget. You've also checked that relative to other functions or other works within the election period, you saw that there has been very minimal disagreement in terms of the data that has been used in terms of register. You go, you are disallowed, the process, the timing, and all that. Yes, there has been very minimal in terms of that. So the Electoral Commission has, over time, increased their efficiency and effectiveness in terms of the discharge of their duties. But not entirely to say that they are perfect. There's no any perfect institution in the world.
But there are political undertones to this. You would agree with me that it will be quite difficult for you to cry foul, especially because of your administration instigated the removal of Charlotte Osei. What's your thoughts about protecting key institutional heads, especially with that of the Electoral Commission?
We did not just remove the Electoral Commissioner. There were some particular procurement breaches, which was grounded in law, and you ask yourself whether it did happen. There were so many things that went into it, and these were factors of the law and the processes that have been broken. So if procurement issues have come up, and in fact it has been breaches of those particular, and if you quite remember, the petitions and what have you did not come from members of the New Patriotic Party. It came from the same commission, members of the commission. So these are different situations and scenarios that we are looking at. But we don't want to draw much politics into this. If they feel that because we had followed a certain process and this was because of breaches, they should go and look for anything that they want to look for, because they have already made their mind to send them off. But by me, from the objective point of view, I'm very certain that the Electoral Commission successfully over the period, not later to this, have performed creditably. And I believe that even in the state of Africa, West Africa, people are clapping for Ghana in terms of us being able to distinguish ourselves in terms of electoral process, dispute management, and also the outcomes of elections in Africa.
As a political party, would you agree with proposals that the Constitution ought to be amended to protect key institutions from political interference? For example, the Electoral Commission.
Very well. If we want to strengthen key institutions, and by doing such amendment, what is wrong with that? If it is actually intended to protect independent institutions and will do what is right. I don't think that I would be speaking against such processes.
Stay with me. Let me just bring in Mr. Kwame as we look at the legal implications of this. What will it take for us to make those changes in our constitution, for example, to protect key state institutions, for example, like the Electoral Commission, from the legal point of view?
Point of view, the constitution has to be reviewed to change the article on the appointment of the Electoral Commissioner, so that he or she will not be appointed by the executive, but we could find other ways of appointing them. I would say that various jurisdictions have various ways of appointing them. Some of them you have various councils. I think in Kenya and other places, in some of the institutions, you have members of certain institutions being given the right to vote for who should head that institution. With regard to the Electoral Commission, there are many ways that we could go around it. Maybe we could look at various ways, such as getting, probably we could say maybe the Council of State, for example, the Council of State can recommend somebody to be the Electoral Commissioner, so that it won't be solely the remit of the executive. And then after that, you can have whoever is nominated submitted to various interested parties. I mean, the CSO. It should be a rigorous activity, so that it will not look like there's any political interference. But unfortunately, in our system as it is, almost every position is appointed by the executive. Almost every high position is appointed by the executive. So you cannot really pinpoint any time in the past where we had another way of appointing these high officials. But a starting point maybe having the various registered political parties in good standing as one body, having the Council of State as one body, and then various CSOs, more or less forming a certain non-executive or non-judicial, non-legislative body, a body that will not be related to either the executive legislature or a judiciary, formed in order to propose an electoral commissioner. And these people, they can even invite submissions for those interested in the position. And then you can have a number of people, and these council members can then vote as to who should be the electoral commissioner. And then aside that, when it comes to the removal at the moment, it's by petition to the president, who will then refer to the Chief Justice. But maybe, and also, it can go beyond that, because that is under Article 146. However, if you look at Article 151 on the removal of judicial officers, the electoral commissioner is akin to a court of appeal judge. So it's in that high office under 146. However, if you look at judicial officers per se under 151, we need 2/3 of the members to vote for their removal. So if we could have a combination of 146 and 151 when it comes to removal of such public officers, it will help, because then it is not in the hands of just a few people, but then you have others who have to vote, and there has to be a 2/3 majority in order for these people to be removed. So I feel the solution is right there in our constitution. And then we can just amend it by making some of these removal processes subject to some of the other articles in the Constitution, as I've said. For example, adding Article 151 to 146, so that the removal will not be merely after the petition and the recommendation, but you also have people having to vote in order for this removal to be done. The same for the appointment. When the person is proposed, they can be put to a vote by a council of sorts, something like the Judicial Council, but not the Judicial Council per se. So the appointment will be by the vote of not the whole country,
Okay.
Because I suppose we haven't agreed for yet, but maybe in the future we can have that. So the appointment should be by vote by a recommended body. The removal should be by vote by a recommended body with a high voting threshold, which we are at least 2/3.
So Kwame, I appreciate your time. He is a key spokesperson for the CPP. But Haruna Mohammed, stay with me. I want your reaction to the next story I'm about to do. I know that...
Okay, I'll stay with you.
Please stay with me. The NDC chairman, Johnson Nketia, is not ruling out the possibility of running for president himself. Just 6 months into President Mahama's administration, subtle signs of a power struggle over who succeeds him are beginning to surface within the ruling NDC. While this is expected, given that President Mahama is constitutionally barred from seeking re-election, Asiedue Nketia is urging party members and interested groups to tread carefully. Speaking on PM Express, he issued a caution to all prospective presidential hopeful within the party, emphasizing the need for unity and restraint as the secession conversation quietly takes shape.
Have robust structures that will help us choose the next flag bearer.
Robust structures. Which structures? Is it grassroots all the way to the...
Yes, from the grassroots all the way to the presidential primaries. And we'll get the next flag bearer. We've been learning lessons and improving our processes since the formation of the party. So I have no doubt in my mind at all about the fact that we'll pull through the next primaries peacefully.
You say they must know who wants to contest first. Does Asiedue Nketia want to contest?
We are not there yet. We are not there yet because we have responsibilities to undertake. And I've always been cautioning that there are certain things you don't do at certain times. For instance, we are trying to put ourselves together as a government to run the country and to discharge our obligations and as deliver on our promises and so on. So immediately after you win elections, if you begin talking about who will be or how you are going to win the next elections, it could mean an insult to the population because they will take you to mean that, after all, you are not interested in delivering on your promises at all, and that your objective is to win elections and govern. So, having won election, you have achieved your objective. So you are now thinking about achieving the next objective. So it is offensive to the population.
Well, Haruna, let me wrap up with you. Just get your brief thoughts on this. Is the NPP threatened by the next crop of leaders that may be taking over the reins for the NDC?
Please come again. I didn't hear you. Okay.
I wanted to find out if the NPP is threatened by the next crop of leaders that may be taking over reins in the NDC.
Next crop of leaders.
Yes.
Is the NDC doing election?
Certainly not. But I'm sure you've seen Musa Dankwa's polls.
Is it because Asiedue Nketia is beginning to demonstrate his frontline presidential ambition, or you think he's exiting from the place?
Well, you could say that. He's not ruling that out completely, but he hasn't come out. He couldn't come out outrightly to say that. He is not ruling that out completely. But as a political party, are you threatened, really?
No, because I cannot be threatened on nothing. Are they going for elections? Have you seen people coming out to say they want to contest for chairman, general secretary? Why will I be threatened by the air? I have to be threatened by substance. So we are not threatened.
We are not threatened.
How can a liberal democratic party such as MPP be threatened by air? We should be threatened by personality. And nobody is contesting anything. So why are we threatened?
You're not threatened if somebody like Asiedue Nketia becomes the flag bearer of the party?
Why are we going to be threatened? We've beaten Asiedue Nketia in 2016 elections. We've beaten him again in 2020. He came and beat us in 2024. So he was the chairman. And if he comes as a flag bearer, why are we going to be threatened? There has always been history in this country. And we believe that the MPP have a track record. So we will campaign based on our track record. And also the persons that we bring forward to become flag bearer and lead the party in the 2028 elections will be the trump card of the party and the ideology and principle of the party. So I don't think that if President Ketia become a flag bearer should be a threat to us. We all know his inconsistencies when we went to court in 2012. We all know. We've known him in parliament. We've known him as a minister. We've known him as a general secretary. We know him as a chairman. So there is no qualms. We don't fear. We are just putting our best foot forward on the 31st of January, and we wait the NDC to resolve their matters and bring somebody else.
I appreciate your time here on the Pulse, Deputy General Secretary of the MPP, Haruna Mohammed. But let me bring in Musa Dankwa to join the conversation here as we just look at who is next in line when it comes to the NDC and taking over the reins of power. We appreciate your time here on the Pulse. I know that you conducted some research on Johnson Asiedu Nketiah's popularity within the NDC. Now that he has hinted at it, let me go through your key findings just to set the tone for the conversation. Run us through some of the key things you found.
Right. Thank you very much for having me. If you look at the last poll that we did, in fact, there was no indication any of the people we mentioned were going to contest.
Okay.
I think this is the first time we've heard unofficially, I think they're saying he has interest in running. So if you look at the poll we did last time, which included all the possible candidates we had, led by Denano Poku on 25%, Haruna Idrisu was on 20.7%, Atufosu on 12.9%, Ablakwa on 9.9%, and Johnson Asiedu Nketiah on 9.8%. Ezenato 6.3%, Milos Deborah 4.9%. So let me just end with this kind of key contenders.
Okay.
Now, none of these people have said they were contesting. So far, we've not heard anything from any of these people.
Okay.
But the public is speculating because they know that regardless of the poll list, the person who will lead NDC would come from this bunch. So whether they declare or not, the public is allowed to express their views. And what we have done so far is the public perception of who they think should lead NDC. Now, that was April. We are concluding our June-July poll, which will come out next week. We are yet to see what will happen in the race now that we've taken out Jinana Opoku for simple reason that she may not contest because of health reasons.
Interesting. But what was the sample size you used to conduct this research, really?
No, this sample was about 7,500 across the entire country. And indeed, the views are not just views of NDC, but also MPP voters, floating voters, and indeed all other Ghanaians. We want to know who they prefer to lead, because that will give you an indication as to how they may vote if their choices are given to them.
And this new survey, you're already doing it? Is already, you've sent individuals
it's almost done.
Already?
It should come out next week, I think 2nd July or so.
I see. So we're looking forward to that. And if this survey is anything to go by, then we know the individuals who are most popular within the party and what that would mean for the next phase of leadership for the NDC. We appreciate your time here on the Pulse. Well, away from that, NDC chairman Asiedu Nketiah, we know, has reaffirmed the party's position, stating that the NDC fully supports the election of metropolitan, municipal and district chief executives as part of efforts to deepen local governance and accountability. Let's listen to him.
A decision to make whether MMDCs ought to be elected. And that is different from another decision. If they have to be elected, are they going to be elected on their own, or they are going to be sponsored by political parties? So there are two different decisions. As far as I know, the MPP was pushing for election of MMDCs on partisan basis. And that was where we departed from them. we think that there's a significant opinion that MMDCs ought to be elected. As to whether they ought to be elected on partisan basis is another thing. So we stand for election on individual merit. And MPP thinks that we should elect on partisan basis.
Well, let me bring in a local governance expert, James Mensah, just to get his thoughts on this. It's about time we're hearing from Sedu Nketia fully supporting the election of MMDCs. Let me take your thoughts on this. Is that the way to go moving forward? So James,
Hello?
you have to unmute for me to hear you clearly. I can hear you now, loud and clear.
Yes,
I just wanted to pick your thoughts.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon.
On your station. So I think that election of MMDCs is probably one of the best options that we could have as a country, because it actually enhances accountability, deepens democracy at the local level. However, there's also another side to it. The side to it is about whether we should have it on partisan basis or non-partisan basis. Theoretically, having it on non-partisan basis would have been the best option, so that the MMDCs are accountable to the local people. But others are also looking at it from another perspective because of the political system of Ghana. And because for a lot of people, because our country is a bit partisan, they are looking at it from the perspective that what of if we elect and somebody who is elected is in quotes from a different political party, what would happen? So that's where the challenge is. Otherwise, electing our MMDC is the best option for us now.
But is that going to help us moving forward, especially when we cannot rule out the fact that once we open the floodgates for it to be an electoral process, there would certainly be political undertones where we have key political parties sponsoring individuals to go for this?
Thank you. So that is where the issue actually comes in. So if we make it non-partisan, it means that no party can actually sponsor anybody. In theory, no party can sponsor.
In theory, but not in actual fact.
Yes, because we are just learning from the district assembly elections, where assembly members are supposed to be elected on non-partisan basis, right?
Yeah.
But in practice, it's not open. We can't see it openly, but we know undertones. Political parties do sponsor people. So probably the same thing may repeat if we want to elect our MMDCs. So what we can actually do going forward is to try to be very clear about this in terms of, first, can we get some document or some policy that is going to at least help us mitigate some disagreement that are likely to come, because a disagreement between maybe a central government, the president, and then the chief executive at the local level, because the chief executive now feels that he am accountable to my people, not to the president, because I was not appointed by the president. So going forward, yes, we can elect, but we must be sure to put up some mitigative measures to ensure clear legal mandates between what the chief executive can do and then how the president can also, what the president can instruct, and also if there are disputes, what will be the dispute resolution mechanism that will be put in place to ensure that where a perceived person is, or somebody is perceived to be in a different party from where the president also is from, so that we can deal with some of these things. I think that is the way we can deal with this situation, because it will likely come up.
I appreciate your time here on The Pulse. Mr. James Mensah is a local governance expert. Now let's turn our attention to the NPP, where grassroots leadership and leaders in the Volta region have officially thrown their support behind Brian Acheampong as the party's next presidential candidate. At a press conference in Hope, polling station executives, constituency officers and coordinators praised Brian Champong as a result-oriented leader with a strong track record of commitment to the party's grassroots. They are urging the national leaderships to give greater weight to the voices of the party's base in determining the NPP's future direction.
So I will support the institution with a lot of computers. If you go to the University of Ghana Business School, one of my companies, Rock City Hotel, built the ICT center in the business school. Yes, and I think about 3-4 years ago, and it's still functioning.
Honorable Brian Champong is a leader who listens, respects the base, and then has consistently worked to strengthen the party structures, even in times when others stayed away. His track records, speaking for itself, as follows. He has empowered communities through initiatives such as borehole construction, farm inputs, and educational supports. He has demonstrated his commitment in promoting education, healthcare, hospitality, and economic empowerment. He values the role of police station executives, our coordinators, and the constituency leaders in building a winning party. We admonish all presidential hopefuls, national executives, and former appointees against neglecting the grassroots, the true owners and builders of our party, NPP. The party's success also relies on the police station executives, foot soldiers, and coordinators who drive its machinery at the community level. Don't overlook the importance of the grassroots. Our call. We call on all presidential hopefuls to engage directly with the grassroots and avoid assuming that endorsement from former government appointees represent the base. That's not the case at all. The fact that former appointees have gone to show support to some few presidential aspirants doesn't mean that's the voice of the grassroots. We have our voice to say. We urge the national leadership to conduct a free, fair, and transparent internal electioneering process that reflects the true will of the party grassroots. We appeal to all stakeholders to put party unity and grassroots empowerment above all personal ambitions.
Well, we can now hear from Dr. Brian Champong, who today has been donating some computers to UNIMAC IG.
So I will support the institution with a lot of computers. If you go to the University of Ghana Business School, one of my companies, Rock City Hotel, built the ICT center in the business school. Yes, and I think about 3-4 years ago, and it's still functioning. So I am going to donate 50 computers to UNIMAC. And some AI tools. To support my school. We need to now get Ghanaians to develop AI-related tools for our consumption. And when it is developed by Ghanaians, get Ghanaians to support it. And that is where we are. So we are pretty much at the early stages of it. The second one is, how do you use AI to combat misinformation? I think it's the easiest question to answer. Just spend time searching the question online. Most of the time, you will get the right information from verifiable sources.
Well, let me bring in Davis Opoku. He is MP for Impresu and a key member of Brian Achampon's campaign team. We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. This must come as good news to you. We're just hearing from some key stakeholders in the Volta region pledging support for Brian Achampon.
It's a very welcoming news. It's a good news. In fact, I was taking notes whilst the young lady was delivering the speech. This is just to tell you that it's the first time. I was surprised when Carlos called that there are a group of persons in the Volta region who have declared support for the candidature of Brian Achampon. And the interesting thing is that, so in all the aspirants who intend to campaign or who intend to stand for the president, Brian's candidature is the youngest, sort of. We just started campaigning, we are putting structures in place, and to receive this overwhelming support from a group of polling station officers, for us, is humbling, and it's something that we welcome wholeheartedly. The interesting bit is that the Brian Achampon's campaign focus has been how we are able to touch base with our grassroots. We believe that...
Mr. Davis, if you could project a little bit for me so that I can hear you clearly. Yeah. I'm struggling to hear you. Better now. Better now.
Is it okay now?
Better now.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that the grassroots that delivered victory for the MPP prior to the 2000 elections, the grassroots that delivered victory for Nana Akufo-Addo in the 2016 elections and 2020 elections, cannot be vilified. I mean, there's been suggestions that this whole polling station structure should be scrapped. We don't think that is the case. If there's a need for an expansion, yes, there has to be an expansion. But we believe that these are persons that we need to win the next election, because our network has a very, very powerful network across the country. And Brian appreciates the efforts and everything that the police station people are doing. In fact, in the lead up to the 2024 election, he was among the only persons in the Eastern region to have gone around all the 33 constituencies, engaged with polling station officers, and also Council of Elders and the Council of Patrons. And it's gratifying that even polling station officers who are not in the Eastern region have seen what he did for them, and are today yearning to pay him back by voting him massively. So the lady has said it all. We welcome it, and I'm happy that the campaign is taking shape, and I'm happy that the grassroots of the party know what they want, and they know that it is Brian Achampon who can lead the MPP to deliver an emphatic victory in the 2028 general elections.
We heard from Andy Apiakubi tell us that we should expect surprises when it comes to this race. I'm wondering, what's your game plan? How do you plan to get the over 200,000 delegates on your side?
I'm sure our competitors are listening, so having the,
so you won't give out the hints yet.
Yes, but we intend to touch base not once. We're going to touch base with every delegate of the MPP. We are looking at the proposals that have come. We are looking at approximately 300,000 delegates across the country, and Brian is ready and willing to touch base with all of them to tell them what he can do, and that it's not about he, Brian, or Dr. Bawumia, or Kennedy Achampon, or whoever, but it's about the MPP winning political power to better the lives of the ordinary Ghanaians. And so we need to look at what has happened in the past, the data as we have it in the 2024 elections, and check. Just like President Kufuor's campaign is a show sitting room, we will be checking each candidate and we'll be checking the boxes to see who fits the points to win us political power. And that is the message. We are not going to engage in any politics of insults. Our message is very straightforward. It is the MPP, and the MPP must win in the 2028 elections. And we believe strongly that with Brian Champon, we would have that victory that we all are yearning for.
Your competitors are already engaging groups. What groups will Brian engage in next?
Well, interestingly, all the persons that our competitors are meeting today are happy that Brian is in the race. For instance, first, it was a meeting with MMDCs. It is Brian Champon who first invited MMDCs to meet with him in Nkwetiakwa. Invited them. Then the other aspirants now realized that we have a group called MMDCs who have served the government of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who have served the party in various and diverse ways, and it's important that they bring them on board. So we are happy that when we take the lead, others follow. And we are also happy that persons who need that recognition in the party, MMDCs, polling station executives, party communicators, are now being recognized as major stakeholders in the forward movement or in the victory plan of the MPP. And we are going to do that. We need everybody on board. I mean, both former executives of the party and present executives. We need everybody to execute a proper campaign in the lead up to the 2028 elections. And so if it would take Brian Champon to remind all the other aspirants that we have certain special groups in the party that ought to be invited, we will do that. So we have met with MMDCs. We're going to meet with former parliamentary candidates this weekend. For one or two reasons, we've called it off. We are meeting with party communicators. And they know, if you talk to any party communicator, he will tell you that even before this announcement, amongst all the aspirants, it is Brian Champon who has given them the most support, supporting them in terms of what they need to ensure that they communicate for and on behalf of the party. So we are on. The campaign is on. It's taking shape. We are happy that the polling station and the grassroots members of the party are associating with the Brian Champon brand. And one thing that we are assuring them is that it is the brand that will deliver victory for the MPP in the 2028 elections.
We appreciate your time, Mr. Davis Ansah-Opoku, who is MP for Impreso and a key member of Brian Champon's campaign team. Well, away from politics, from July 1, 2025, a 15% value-added tax will be applied to non-life insurance premiums following the enforcement of the Value-Added Tax Amendment Act 2023, Act 1107. The new policy affects a wide range of general insurance products such as property, health, travel, and business interruption insurance, which offers protection against risk and other death or permanent disabilities. The GRA has defended the implementation of the tax, indicating that this measure is part of efforts to broaden the tax base and enhance domestic revenue mobilization. David Latte is Chief Revenue Officer of GRA.
Why now contains several reasons. However, the basic consideration is we having to realize the current situations on the ground. From 2023, there was a need to improve or increase the tax, embody the tax base, improve the tax equity and neutrality, and also mobilize additional revenue to fund public services and infrastructure. So in that vein, there was a need to introduce the tax that have been on the drawing board or that have been in our tax law since 2013. Like I said, equity and fairness in the tax system. This is very, very important. VAT is a consumption tax, and its application across sectors ensures that no industry is unjustifiably privileged or disadvantaged. And other service sectors, such as banking, telecom, and hospitality, are already subject to VAT in certain circumstances.
You're still watching The Pulse. We'll be back after this quick turn. Please stay tuned in. Thank you for staying with us here on The Pulse. To other stories now, the embattled Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo has now turned to the High Court to halt the process probing her, which could lead to her removal from office. Describing the proceedings against her as deeply flawed and unconstitutional, the suspended Chief Justice says she's left with no choice but to fight back, both in court and in public. Michael Ashali has more in the following report.
The Chief Justice, Gertrude Torkornoo, is once again fighting processes to remove her, this time not just in the court, but before the cameras too, outlining 4 key reasons for breaking her silence this novel way.
Every step of the removal process being undertaken against me is being done in a manner that breaks every rule on how justice is delivered in our country. And this is why I find the need to draw the nation's attention to the serious violations of the Constitution and law in the process, and the danger it holds for the development of the nation's democracy.
Her message was strong and direct. She will not resign, describing the proceedings to remove her from office as unconstitutional, unlawful, and dangerous for Ghana's democracy.
If I resign under these circumstances, I will be saying that this flawed, unknown, and opaque process is acceptable. It is not.
This is the first time in Ghana's history that a sitting Chief Justice faces removal through such a process. Justice Torkornoo called it historic but deeply flawed and warned of the lasting damage it could cause to judicial independence.
It's historic. In all of Ghana's 68-year history as an independent republic, there has never been a hearing for the removal of the Chief Justice. One would therefore have hoped that if such a process becomes necessary, it would provide good guidance and precedent for nation building. Unfortunately, every step of the removal process being undertaken against me is being done in a manner that breaks every rule on how justice is delivered in our country.
The suspended Chief Justice says the choice of Edu Lodge, cordoned off and heavily guarded, is psychological intimidation.
I was also living with him at the time he was abducted and murdered. Was the Edu Lodge chosen for my inquiry to make me feel insecure? I think so. And I continue to hold the view that there's no reason why a judicial hearing is being conducted behind the high walls of Edu Lodge.
She also challenged the 3 petitions that triggered her suspension, calling them misleading, misinformed, and in some cases, outright false.
And so I knew that it was necessary that the issues being thrown around as petitions against me needed to get into the public space. I swore to a supplementary affidavit alerting the Supreme Court also of human rights violations that I had started encountering when I went to the Article 146 hearings. However, the members of the Supreme Court that had the petition for the hearing in open, and they also struck out the supplementary affidavit at the request of the Attorney General. I have decided to make this statement today because the violations have not stopped. Indeed, they have escalated beyond anything I could have imagined as possible in justice delivery.
In the last hour, the embattled Chief Justice has taken legal action at the High Court, hoping to challenge the legality of the proceedings and to stop what she describes as a miscarriage of justice.
It is this total absence of compliance with all known rules of fair hearing that has caused my lawyers to file applications for judicial review in the High Court to declare all the proceedings void. Because the clear danger is that through this flagrant violation of CI 47 and the darkness of the current proceedings being held in camera behind the walls of Edu Lodge, my lawyers and I can come to the end of the proceedings. The evidence will show that every one of those allegations in the petitions that were given to me on 27th March is unfounded and untrue.
Justice Gertrude Tokono insists that she's innocent in the face of all the allegations that have been made against her. She insists that staying to fight is not a battle for her alone, but if she wins for the entire judicial system. For Joy News, Michael Ashale.
But government has denied some of the allegations of political persecution. Here's spokesperson Felix Kwachiofosu.
Her leadership, the Chief Justice, all but insinuated that there was some political agenda at play to oust her, and that this whole process is a result of sin. Let me place on record, without fear of contradiction, and let me be clear that no such political agenda exists. His Excellency the President took an oath to which he was incidentally sworn by her leadership, the Chief Justice herself. And in that oath, he swore to abide by the 1992 Constitution. He is enjoined to act a particular way when he receives petitions of the sort that he has received. And that is all that His Excellency has done. He has had no choice in the matter. The President cannot say that he has a view about how things should be done, and therefore, if petitions have come, he will fail to act. If he did that, he himself would be in breach of the Constitution, and therefore, he has been enjoined to act as any responsible leader or President of the Republic of Ghana would be required to do, as stipulated by the 1992 Constitution. The fourth point is also that we cannot have a sacred cow mentality in the way that we handle state affairs. Every single public official, from the President to the Speaker to the Chief Justice to Supreme Court judges to ministers to all public office holders, are bound by the provisions of Ghanaian law. Indeed, it was the former Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, who once said that when you join the game, you play by the rules. So no public official is allowed to raise him or herself above the laws of Ghana.
Away from that, the Allied Health Professionals Council is clamping down on unlicensed health practitioners and health facilities with expired licenses to ensure policy and public safety. The council warns the violators will face consequences, including closure of their facilities for non-compliance. Facility managers have also been tasked to enforce oversight of professionals allowed to provide services to patients. There's more in this report by Clinton Yeboah.
Across the country, healthcare providers in diagnostics, preventive, therapeutic, and rehabilitative areas are mandated to conduct their services with appropriate authorization from the governing professional body, Allied Health Professions Council. However, some therapists, radiographers, medical laboratory technicians, dietitians, and pharmacists continue to work at the blind side of the council without license. Acting Registrar of the Allied Health Professions Council, Daniel Atanyako, has cautioned against non-compliance with standard practice.
That if you are working in any of the allied health professional areas and you are not licensed, we are coming. You saw that we are coming with police men with us. If you visit your facility and those who are performing allied health functions are not licensed, we will go what the law demands us to do. If it is only allied health work that you are doing there, we have the right to close the facility. If it is not only allied health work, but you are also doing some bit of nursing, some bit of pharmacy, we cannot close those areas, but the allied health areas, we make sure that we close them. If you are an allied health professional and you have not registered, or you have registered but for one reason or the other you have not renewed your PIN, it is time for you to go there and have your status regularized. Otherwise, the first time we came, we only sound words of caution. This time around, if we come and you don't have what it requires for your facility to operate, we will not have any option but to liaise with the appropriate regulatory bodies like IFRA and the police, and then we'll close your facility down. So this is the kind of awareness we want to create. That we are not ending now. We'll continue on with this exercise and make sure that allied health services are quality for the people who obtain such services.
Experts and regulatory authorities joined the Allied Health Professions Council in their monitoring and inspection exercise in Kumasi. The aim is to instill standard practice and ensure patient safety. Daniel Atanyako explained that the exercise will ensure members provide essential care with diligence. He says the council will not renege on its supervisory mandate.
Protect the public. What do I mean by protecting the public? As a regulatory body, it is our mandate to ensure that when people visit health professionals, they are safe. And one of the regulatory bodies that ensure this safety is the Allied Health Professions Council. We are here this afternoon to look at our professionals who render services to the people in this region, whether they are in a good position to render the services that would ensure that the people who go to them for the services will receive services that are safe without any problems. What they are doing, the standard thing that they have to do. So apart from you just having your license, we are also going ahead to look at the processes that you do in carrying out your activities.
For Joy News, my name is Clinton Yabo.
Away from that, student leaders leading the fight against drug abuse in their schools have been empowered to tackle the menace with knowledge and resources. This was at the commemoration of the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking held today on the theme, The Evidence is Clear, Invest in Prevention. The Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opokwajiman, who emphasized that additional measures are being put in place to tackle the canker, said that they're also focusing on helping those affected by the substance. There's more in this report by Hannah Odami.
Addressing the gathering, the Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opokwajiman, who said compassion should be given a chance in tackling illicit drug use, also charged the Narcotics Control Board and its stakeholders to remain resolute in their quest to stop the canker.
Ghana is investing in practical preventative solutions to address the root causes of substance abuse and the destruction of over 16 metric tons of seized drugs just last week is proof that we are active in this fight. Every gram destroyed is potentially a life saved. Let us support the Commission and its allied institutions by providing the tools, the training, the resources necessary to stay ahead of these evolving threats.
The Director General of the Narcotics Control Board, Director General Brigadier M.O. Mate, acknowledged how sophisticated drug cartels have become, reason why they are working to eliminate such networks.
That's why what appears to be a gloomy situation, Ghanaians are definitely neither helpless, bystanders, nor are we powerless. Here in Ghana, we, the Narcotics Control Commission, is strong in collaborating with our national security institutions and valued international partners, continue to lead a fierce and focused campaign against illicit drugs. Through tactical border control, intelligence-driven interdictions, the pursuit of swift prosecutions, and the confiscation of criminal assets.
In line with this, the King of Ikwamuman, His Royal Majesty Odeneho Kwafu Akoto III, gifted the Narcotics Control Board 100 acres of land for the construction of a training school resourced with modern equipment to combat drug trade.
It is a call to strengthen our collective resolve to prevent drugs abuse and protect our communities, especially our young people from the grip of drug abuse and addiction. On my part, as the Akonuhene and and that of my people, we have allocated about 100 acres of land to enable the Narcotics Control Commission to establish a training school at Akonu. To train their personnel and other professionals in the fight and control of narcotics in Ghana and beyond.
That's where students like Precious and Kelvin will be heading to after school, so they can be trained as they say they are poised to help rid Ghana of illicit drug use.
I'll try my possible best to educate my friends on the dangers and causes of drugs and how they can prevent themselves from taking drugs.
Drug abuse is not only an individual problem but a national emergency, and also every gram of drug destroyed is a life saved. So this tells me that no matter the circumstance, whether poor academic performance or any emotional trauma I'm going through, I must not resort to drugs because drug does not help in any way.
I am Hannah Odame for Joy News.
Education Minister Haruna Idrisu is pushing for the establishment of presidential libraries to preserve the country's democratic legacy and educational development. Despite having 6 presidents under the Fourth Republic, Ghana lacks any institution dedicated to preserving presidential legacies through curated archives or public learning centers. Speaking at the inauguration of a new governing board of the Ghana Library Authority at the Ministry of Education, Haruna Idrisu tasked the governing board to develop legislative review to establish a legal framework that will enable the management and funding of presidential libraries independent of direct state funding. There's more in the following report.
The establishment of presidential libraries would provide a unique opportunity for Ghanaians to learn about their country's history, political development, and the legacies of past presidents. By preserving and showcasing presidential archives, these libraries would serve as valuable resources for research, education, and national development. Speaking at the inauguration of the new governing board of the Ghana Library Authority at the Ministry of Education, Haruna Idrisu tasked the governing board to develop legislative review to establish a legal framework that will enable the management and funding of presidential libraries, independent and direct state financing.
In the next few days and months, I will, through Cabinet, seek a review of the Ghana Library Board Act of 1970, which should allow for the creation of a book fund and, more importantly, management of presidential libraries in Ghana. So I'm taxing this new board and council of the Ghana Library Authority. Again, a new initiative of government, but not to be funded by the state. I expect the private sector and the corporate world to work with you. We should be able to honor all the presidents who have served our country with the presidential library.
The libraries, according to the Minister of Education, Haruna Idrisu, will not only function as a national archive, but also serve as a center for civic education, history, and leadership development. Chairman of the Ghana Library Authority, Dr. Michael Ato Esuman, assured that the authority will take deliberate steps toward realizing the minister's vision for the country's presidential libraries.
Demand of the people of this country, and we are ready to ensure that all that you've shared with us as a board, we are ready to pour our hearts out with healthy mind and healthy body to ensure that we work to the best of our ability to achieve all these set out objectives that you shared, and I'll also say the terms of reference to satisfy the needed.
The Education Minister also sworn in the governing boards of the Ghana Library Authority and the Commission for Technical and Vocational Education and Training, CTVET.
Your service begins at a time of great opportunity and challenges for the Ghanaian youth. One, in the management of our economy, and 2, recognizing what contribution you can make to improve the employability and by extension the livelihood of our young people if you are able to support them to acquire the skills and training that is required of them that assures them of employment. I should state that there is a significant shift in the population age structure of Ghana from one which was dominated by children within the age cohort of 0 to 14 years to one now dominated by 15 to 35 years. That significantly should occupy your attention, that the young people within that age bracket of 15 to 35 years, investing in TVET and thus youth employment is not only a strategic pathway to harnessing the country's human capital for sustainable economic growth, but it's also a demographic imperative.
And Dase and Rahinatu Abu reports read to you.
Civil society organizations have tasked government to ensure the passage of the non-profit bill set to regulate their activities. Well, this came up after an assurance was given by the Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, at the 3rd Civil Society Forum that the bill will be given the needed attention. Well, the CSOs say the bill will regulate and strengthen their operations and asked for smooth registration of NGOs. Hannah Odami once again was at the forum and filed this report.
The forum, among others, is to take stock of the work of civil society groups and, most importantly, how to fill the funding gaps after the massive cut by the U.S. government after the Trump administration took over. Delivering the keynote address, Chairman of the National Development Planning Commission, Dr. Ninoy Thompson, noted CSOs must work at boosting their credibility by accounting for donations they receive and also recalibrate in the face of declining funding.
For a whole range of reasons, organizations and even governments in rich countries may continue to fund CSOs in Ghana and Africa, even in the face of declining resources. Here, the case for credibility takes on somewhat different hue or significance, where local CSOs must then prove that they are not conduits or pawns for a sinister agenda of global or ideological manipulation and domination. And the brother from New York did allude to that, so that CSOs do not work to the whims of those who give them money.
Chairperson of the Coordinating Committee of the Forum, Beauty Emefanate, enumerated measures being put in place to meet the requirements outlined by Dr. Thompson.
The Ghana Civil Society Forum continues to provide platforms for networking, knowledge sharing, and capacity building among CSOs, and enhancing our effectiveness in promoting sustainable development. We have also set in place measures to put in place a peer review mechanism that will help us to hold each other to account and deepen our accountability.
On her part, the Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, said reforms needed to facilitate activities of the CSOs has become imperative, reason why government is actively considering passage of the non-profit bill, which is expected to also represent the tenets of the CSOs.
There is currently no specific law in place that facilitates the activities of CSOs and nurtures the development of the civil society space. The non-profit bill is in the works, and we are committed to working with civil society to build consensus towards passing the bill into law.
Directors of some CSOs who spoke to Joy News expressed hope the recommendations made at the forum will be implemented.
The Vice President has given a broad way. He has given us the way. He has told us what is supposed to be done. But it's left to CSOs and the organizations, the policy makers, and then the institutions to implement it, to make sure it is done. Unfortunately, it is not the reality on the ground.
Having
a business that generates some income, and then you can use that income, to finance. Yes. We have a number of activities. We have, for instance, we have a training center that actually is hired out for use. We also have training program that we actually run ourselves, and then to be able to get some income. We have also members who are actually contributing. That is what creates the sense of ownership, sense of being local. So we are trying a lot of intervention that can help us to sustain our work.
The two-day event, organized by the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, brought together civil society leaders, policymakers, and development partners. For Joy News, I am Hannah Odame.
NATO member states are meeting this week in the Netherlands for a major summit. The Defense Alliance gathering will focus heavily on defense spending against the backdrop of the outbreak of hostilities between member states, US, Israel and Iran as well in the Middle East. Well, for more on this, we're being joined by our DW correspondent, Arthur Sullivan, live from Berlin. Arthur, we appreciate your time here on The Pulse. This NATO meeting comes against the backdrop of conflict and now possible peace between Israel, Iran and the US. Has NATO itself had much to say about the situation there?
Well, this is the first gathering of NATO since Donald Trump returned to the White House, and the expectation up until very recently was that the focus at this meeting would be on defence spending, how much member states would commit to defence spending, and Trump's apparent success in getting them to pay more. But that conflict in the Middle East, the Israeli attacks on Iran, Iranian responses, the US attacks on Iran, apparent ceasefire, and now further uncertainty, that's obviously become a focus ahead of the gathering. Now, there have been some protests in The Hague where the meeting's taken place ahead of the summit, mostly with an anti-war message. And NATO and its Secretary-General Mark Rutte have not really addressed the Iran issue that forcefully. Rutte's big comment was that, in his view, the US attacks did not violate international law. And then on Tuesday, Trump himself published a really quite remarkable text message that he had received from Rutte, where the NATO leader praised the, quote, truly extraordinary and, quote, decisive action from the US in Iran, saying it, quote, made us all safer. So going by that at least, it's pretty clear that within NATO, there's not going to be much dissent or disagreement regarding what the US has done in the Middle East.
But the big topic, though, at this meeting will be about defense spending by members. What exactly are you picking?
Well, since Trump's first term, this topic of what percentage of member nations' GDP they spend on defence has been just constant. So for years that target was 2%, and for years most failed to meet that target. Now, a combination of Trump's own pressure and also the war in Ukraine means that now all but 10 of the 32 members do actually meet that target. But the big ticket item at this summit is that there's going to be, hopefully, from NATO's perspective, a new target. That's a 5% target which combines two figures. 3.5% of GDP on defence spending, and then an extra 1.5% of GDP on defence-related infrastructure spending. So that's things like roads, bridges and cybersecurity. And the idea is that all of this spending would be in place by 2030, so a very, very big commitment. Now, NATO officials have been working for months to try and find agreement, and they have largely found consensus. And I think the best example of how much that has changed is right here in Germany. For years, it was a real laggard when it came to this topic, but now it's living up to the pledge it made that it would reach a turning point after Russia invaded Ukraine. It's going to boost its defence spending by more than 2/3 by 2029 in order to meet these new pledges. But there is one big issue with these plans, and that's Spain. Spain is quite clearly opposed to this. Its Prime Minister has said that it doesn't agree that it should have to spend this much. It currently is one of the 10 that doesn't meet the 2% target. And its Prime Minister, who's one of the few left-wing Prime Ministers in Europe, he thinks that it's unreasonable and that it could damage social spending and green investment in Spain. Now, there is the possibility that Spanish opposition will lead to other countries seeking possible exemptions and opt-outs. That could lead to complaints from Trump of more European freeloading, as he calls it. And so the big thing we're really going to find out from this meeting today is, will there be an agreement? What will that agreement be? And what are the nature of those possible opt-outs for Spain and others?
Well, Arthur, just before I let you go, for several years now, there have been existential questions about NATO's future, mostly regarding the U.S. role under President Trump. Can this meeting show up things?
Well, Trump's views have really dominated the narrative around NATO for a decade, including when he wasn't president, in that period in between him winning the 2 elections. So the leader of NATO's most powerful member, the US, his views still define and guide these gatherings. A really good example is that his recent early walkout from a G7 meeting prompted NATO to keep this meeting shorter than usual. So there's only going to be one 2.5-hour meeting involving the heads of state. That's less than normal, and that's going to take place today, and that should ensure at least that Trump stays for the whole meeting. But there are growing fears ahead of this meeting that Trump could try and water down US commitment to NATO's Article 5. And that's the famous pledge that an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all. Now, on his flight to The Hague, Trump told reporters that there were, in his words, numerous definitions of Article 5, and that he will give his definition when he gets there. Now, Mark Rutte claimed yesterday that US commitment to NATO is, in his view, unwavering. But I don't think that this gathering is going to realistically lead to any transformed state in the transatlantic partnership. Under Trump, the US has consistently shown itself to be an unpredictable and at times unreliable partner on defence. And that's something that European leaders now routinely refer to. So an agreement on new spending pledges would be a boost to NATO cohesion, and it would definitely be celebrated by Trump as a big personal victory. But I think few present at this meeting are going to be swept up by any idea that whatever is said here is going to fundamentally improve or change the transatlantic partnership. I think most agree that that ship has sailed.
We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. Arthur Sullivan joining us all the way from Berlin. And that's how we wrap up the bulletin. For more news, the right place to be is myjoyonline.com. My name is Faustina Safo. The Foreign Affairs Ministry will be addressing a news conference. When that commences, we'll take you there live to give you details of some of the key concerns they have been raised. And have a pleasant day as you enjoy the rest of